Let's talk about this Criterion collection, brand new 4K UHD release of, it's a dual release of two films, The Three Musketeers and The Four Musketeers. Now, I recently did a review of a different Criterion two-film 4K release, and this was Jean de Florette and Manon of the Spring. I pronounced those wrong again, but I gave it a shot. But I did a review of this one, and I really like these two films and the way Criterion handled this collection. They also did a very nice job with these two films. And in a similar way, now they're two films, The Three Musketeers and The Four Musketeers, but they're not really. They're really one film in two parts. And it was originally shot that way. It was shot as one film, and then it was like way long. It was like 4 hours long or something. And they're like, you know what, this is not going to play. Why don't we just split this into two parts instead of having that intermission in the middle? And this caused a lot of controversy with the actors at the time, because they'd signed on and were only paid for one film, and they're like, hey, you're going to make twice the amount of money maybe on this thing, and you're only paying us once. What's up? So there was like a big stink about that. And their concern, of course, was warranted. Studio Canal did this restoration, and in the UK, Studio Canal did put out the release of these two films separately, The Three Musketeers and The Four Musketeers, and they have a very nice slipcovers for both of them, and you can check those out on. I'm going to put some pictures up here. Here's The Three Musketeers and The Four Musketeers, and those slipcovers, they do look quite appealing. I think perhaps even more appealing than this Criterion set, even though I do like the way they put both of the films together here. And to me, they are kind of one film. You can't really, you can watch them in different nights or whatever, but they do kind of go into each other, because the first one, it does have a kind of a climatic scene, but it's not over though. And really, I would have liked to have seen even more of these. I think that the cast here is fantastic. The Four Musketeers, or it is really Four Musketeers, because the main character isn't one of the Musketeers, it's D'Artagnan, if you've ever seen any versions of this. Chris O'Donnell played him in the one I'm more familiar with, the 1993 one, that also had Charlie Sheen and Kiefer Sutherland and Oliver Platt playing the Three Musketeers. It has Tim Curry in it as the Cardinal villain type of character. In this film, the Cardinal's played by Charlton Heston, who does a great job, but Tim Curry's hard to beat. Vincent Price played him in the 1949 version, which I've never seen, but I would like to see Vincent Price playing the Cardinal. I bet he does a fantastic job, and I'm a big fan of Vincent Price. Now, the Three Musketeers here are played by Oliver Reed, Richard Chamberlain, and Frank Finlay, and they do a really good job playing those characters. Now, the film follows Michael York, who plays D'Artagnan, and I think a lot of times, if you're not familiar with these films, it does have a lot of D'Artagnan in it and not as much Three Musketeers as you would expect. He kind of becomes friends with them, and they often help him do things, but this film does lean a lot towards comedy, and it is very borderline, almost spoof in some instances. It was directed by Richard Lester, who directed Superman 2 and 3, and you can kind of see that type of quality going on with this film, and it makes it a lot of fun when you're watching it. Now, D'Artagnan, the character of D'Artagnan, is quite a buffoon for most of the film, and he gets a little better as it goes on, but he often gets himself in very comic situations. Now, this is a swashbuckler film, and it plays everything, for the most part, fairly light. Occasionally it gets a little dark, but for the most part it plays it very light and very fun. It is based on the 1844 novel, The Three Musketeers, and these two films cover that novel. And then there's that novel, and there was two other novels based on these characters, the D'Artagnan character and the Three Musketeers, and they take place like 10 years from each other. Like the next one's 10 years later, and they actually did do a version of that. A lot of people are probably more familiar with The Man in the Iron Mask. They did a version of the third and last of the novels of the Three Musketeers. There's also a very amazing supporting cast here. Now, Christopher Lee plays one of the major villains here. He gets a lot of screen time. He has an eye patch, and D'Artagnan's often trying to fight him, and he just kind of usually gets out of the fight, or occasionally they'll have a fight, and some reason one of them gets knocked out or something happens. Now that one of them get killed. There's some great actresses in here, like Faye Dunaway plays Milady, who's one of the major villains of the stories, and also Raquel Welch plays a very hilarious character. He was married to this older dude that D'Artagnan falls in love, and her husband's a very bumbling guy, and D'Artagnan falls in love with her, and she kind of likes him too, and it's just that whole dynamic is really ridiculous now. And also a lot of the supporting characters here are quite great. Like the king is like kind of he's really doofus. He's kind of being controlled by the Cardinal, we talked about earlier, playing by Charlton Heston, who's in charge of everything, really, because the king is just a kind of like he's really a doofus when it comes down to it, and his queen's having an affair with this other duke, and there's just all this intrigue going on within the court of this castle that the Musketeers, or especially D'Artagnan, gets involved with, and often the Musketeers try to help him or things of that nature. Now this. I've seen different versions of this. I haven't ever read the book, so I don't know exactly that. A lot of times it's like the quote for the Musketeers is one for all and all for one, or something to that nature. I don't see a lot of honor a lot of times with the Musketeers in these films. I don't know if that's the case, because I've seen other versions where they have more honor, but they seem to really play like things like D'Artagnan having this extramarital affair and falling in love with this girl, and then him like not having necessarily the best honor, but just getting himself in these hilarious kind of situations that are kind of borderline spoofy in some parts, even though it kind of sometimes it gets a little more serious. But that may be true to the story. I'm not sure, but I mean, I thought it was quite amusing here. But sometimes I do see the Musketeers, especially in, say, the one with Charlie Sheen and Kiefer Sutherland in it, having a little bit more honor. They play it loosey goose, kind of like they kind of have the honor, but they're kind of like even here the characters have been, I guess, kind of, they feel like they've been kind of shit on by the monarchy, and they've kind of over the whole thing, and they're just going to do their own thing. But often there are a few times here where the king asks for their help, and then they do have to help, and they do what they're supposed to do. This set has 4 discs in it. It has 2 4Ks of one of each of the films, and then a Blu-ray of each of the films. Now, I accidentally ordered the Blu-ray version. I'm not sure how I did that, but I got it, and I was like, son of a bitch, this is just a Blu-ray disc. So I returned it to Amazon. I got it from Amazon, and then they sent me like the 4K one like the next day, actually. So now, as far as that is concerned, the Blu-rays actually do look quite good. It's the same transfer on both of the disc. But here's what it looks like on the inside. You got 4 discs, and you also have a little booklet that comes with it. Some nice drawings of different little parts of the film. There's some great sets in this film, like great set designs, and there's some battle scenes and things of that nature. And it's all it's fairly epic in a way, and it's also just the way that the Musketeers handle everything. It's very funny, and I thought anyway. It does maybe seem a little dated, especially if you've seen the newer versions. They've actually got 2 other versions after the 1993 one. I think they made one in 2011, which I haven't seen, and then they made one in 2023. It's like a French version that I read some reviews of it, and it looks like it's pretty solid. The first one, they did the same kind of thing. The first one of that one's called D'Artagnan, and the second one's called Milady, that played the character Faye Dunaway plays. He's like a spy and an assassin character in the royal court, and she's played by Rebecca De Mornay in the 1993 version. Now, both the 4K and the Blu-ray versions in this set look fantastic. They both are sourced from the same master, so they look very similar. Of course, the 4K is going to have an uptick in quality as far as how much resolution and things of that nature you're seeing, and it does have a Dolby Vision. But even in the 4K version here, it still looks fantastic. I mean, not the 4K. Even in the Blu-ray version, it still looks fantastic in both 4K and Blu-ray. I don't have another version of these films, but as far as I did see it on, I did look at it on Amazon Prime, and of course this is a great. It looks a lot better than the way that it looked on Amazon Prime when I checked it out before, because it is a different scan and an upgrade. They did some restoration work to this, and really the clarity and the sharpness looks fairly fantastic. It does have a little. It's not like out of focus, but I wouldn't say. But it doesn't look like. Sometimes when you'll see some films that are very sharp, it does have a little bit of softness to it, but not out of focus softness. It actually looks very organic, and the way that it is supposed to look, the way it was shot, and it does have a kind of that type of feel to it. And oftentimes the color schemes here is very interesting. They have like a dance ball thing where the color schemes are mostly very white. They're wearing white costumes, and everything's kind of really brightly like, but there's still though, and there's a lot of dark scenes here where the blacks are very well defined. The shadow areas, I think everything looks very remarkable here. The color grading, the color timing, it looks all natural on both the 4K and the Blu release. The contrast levels, the greatly improved upon the previous one that I saw, and I highly recommend checking this out. It's the same transfer as the Studio Canal. The Studio Canal typically does very nice work. Now, there are a lot of sword fights in this film, and they look really good in this 4K version, as do the textures of the costumes. There's a lot of period costumes, and a lot of times you really see like a really uptick. There's some of the times those costumes and some of the the colors just kind of pop right out at you. I did recently watch Yojimbo, which is a samurai movie, and like sometimes in that one, like they take that sword and go whoosh, and like someone would just be like cut up and dead immediately. But they often in this film, like they'll be sword fighting, and the person that they're fighting will get hurt but not get killed all the way. Where I guess if you were to watch Jimbo as probably a more realistic version of a sword fight situation where like people get cut up and then they don't recover from it. But here, like I said before, it is kind of played a little bit for laughs sometimes, so people are able to survive things that they wouldn't in other films, so they can come back and have like a few more scenes later on. There was a third movie in this series that was shot, I think maybe 20 years later as well, that most of the cast members who survived this film were in that. Now, all the Musketeers and D'Artagnan were in the film. So I've never seen that one. I don't know. Maybe they'll release a 4K version of that eventually. Now the second film here, the Four Musketeers, it is a little jarring. It is a little different in tone a little bit than the first film. The first one seems like it's following the story fairly tightly. The second one does seem to be, often in some parts of it, seems a little more frivolous than the first one, even though it does eventually build momentum near the end. But I actually enjoyed this aspect of it myself. I thought it really leaned towards more comedy during the first like half of it or something of that nature, and then it gets a little more serious. But I did like that I often felt in the first one that the Musketeers, they didn't develop them that much. It's like you get to see them some here and there, but like they're very well defined in the 1993 version to me, especially because of the actors that were playing them at the time. But here, I don't feel like you get to spend that much time or that much dialogue. They all have their distinct personalities, and then they do have them in this film and the other one. But it takes a long time to really like get into the characters more, because they're just not shown they're shown, but they're not given much like personal dialogue between them. Now eventually, especially in the second film here, Oliver Reed's character Athos is given more personal dialogue, because he has a personal connection to Milady, the Milady character, so he's given a bigger type of substantial role, especially in the second film. Now the other two, you do get to see them a lot on screen, but you're never really given a backstory to them. You get to see their personalities and the way that they act, but they're never really given a backstory like the Athos character is. So let's go ahead and rate these, shall we? I'm going to rate these on a scale from 1 to 5, 1 being the lowest and 5 being the highest. I'm going to give the Three Musketeers and the Four Musketeers, I want to give them a 4-star rating. I consider them one film, really, even though the fourth one does take some... They might have tightened it up had they really put it together as one film, but I think they both have a lot of fun. I'd highly recommend checking them out, especially if you like this story. As far as what Criterion has done here, I'm going to give them 4.5 stars. I do like their dual packaging, and I would have liked to seen a little more. I do like those slip covers on the Studio Canal versions. Those are very nice. I would like to see those. would almost prefer to have those to this, but I don't know. The Criterion collection is very posh. And also, and if you buy those ones from the Studio Canal, they have a Blu-ray with them that has the extras on it, and that one is going to be a Region B, and unless you have a Region B player, you won't be able to play that Blu-ray. You will be able to play the 4Ks, because those 4Ks are region free, so you should be able to play those in a 4K player. Now this new Criterion 4K UHD release is the definitive home viewing experience for these films. There's also some very great special features on here, including several documentaries about the films that I highly recommend checking out. And if you haven't done so already, I would highly recommend liking this video and subscribing to my channel. I also have a lot of other videos on my channel that you can check out, like video reviews of films you can check out on my channel. I'm Dave Watkins, Watkins Films. Thanks for watching.